Welcome, thinkers, to our channel. I'm Sean, and this is Believing Thinkers, where we're loving God with all our minds. Here on our channel, we teach philosophy, theology, and apologetics. It's important, I think, to discuss philosophy in and of itself on the channel before we really do a deep dive into some of the categories, tools, and methods, heuristics of philosophy itself, because we need to understand why we're using it and what we're doing with it. Is it okay to do for Christians? I mean, is philosophy, the thoughts of men, is that bad? Well, we'll do a biblical analysis, particularly of that passage in Colossians chapter 2 in a future video, but for now I just want to lay out some preliminaries. So let's get started. Alright, so in order to be good philosophers, the first thing we need to do is define our terms. So when we say philosophy, what exactly do we even mean by that word? Well, a common definition for philosophy, or a common understanding of the term, is the etymology of it itself. In other words, where it comes from. And it's a combination of two words, philos and sophia, which is love of wisdom. Is that what we do when we do philosophy? We sit around loving wisdom? I mean, is wisdom an object? Which is a philosophical question. Can we hug it? Can we touch it? Is that what we mean when we talk about philosophy? Well, no, of course not. Then what is it we're talking about? Well, more conventionally, what we're talking about is the pursuit of wisdom with philosophy. But even that definition, I feel like, really lacks clarity in what it is we're doing when we do philosophy. Now, understand that this is a difficult topic, believe it or not, for a lot of philosophers, and there's no real solid agreed upon definition, working definition like I'm going to give. So if you have a different one, good on you. Just try to be philosophical about the tools that you employ to try to come to this conclusion, whatever it is. So, what is my definition of philosophy? Well, this is a pragmatic or working definition. And essentially, I would say it is seeking clarity, okay, and understanding about truth, reality, and rightness. Now, for those of you who know philosophy, you probably caught what I did there. All right, seeking clarity and understanding is really what philosophy is in and of itself. But what is it we're seeking clarity and understanding about? Well, truth, which is epistemology and a subdiscipline of philosophy. Reality, now here that would be pretty much everything metaphysical. All right, what do we mean by reality? Are we talking about things that are just physical? Are we talking about ideas and concepts? Are there such things as abstract objects? If there are, what qualifies? How do they exist? What are all the categories of that? It's a lot of stuff to discuss. And then rightness, what are ethical things? What kinds of things are right to do? What kinds of things are we obligated to do, or should we do? Wow, right? Philosophy can get real deep real fast, but it's nothing we need to be afraid of. I know a lot of people, even myself, but prior to formally studying philosophy, had the idea that philosophy was either A, just a bunch of really old dudes like, I don't know, Aristotle and Socrates talking about esoteric things that no one can understand. Let me tell you something, the whippersnapper. Who was that? That guy Aristotle. He's a bomb. Boom! And modern guys are just talking about those old things. And maybe there's a little truth in that. But philosophy is a huge discipline. Why then should Christians be trained in it? Philosophy has a lot to offer. It allows us to think clearly and consistently about things. This part of philosophy that I'm referring to here is really known as logic. Now, what's interesting about logic, depending on who you're talking to, a lot of people don't think of logic in the same way as some of the other categories I mentioned, like epistemology and metaphysics. Logic is sort of like the referee or the rule keeper of thinking, where logic comes in and yellow cards you or red cards you for fouling or for doing something wrong or inconsistent, right? You violated a law of logic. Here's your ticket, all right? Is that true about logic? Well, I think it's a fascinating definition or a fascinating concept of what logic in and of itself is. It's sort of the rule keeper in all the disciplines of philosophy. And it does allow us to think clearly and consistently. It's great to use to apply to your own thoughts, particularly big concepts, worldviews that you hold about the nature of everything, because you can check yourself and make sure you're being consistent. Well, as Christians, we can start to see some benefit, but moreover, it allows us in doing this. Once we analyze our own thoughts and what we want to communicate to others, it allows us to communicate more effectively, because now we can be clear about what it is we're trying to say. And thinking clearly allows us to evaluate and understand the Bible, other theological concepts, again from textbooks and other people's works, as well as opposing arguments, for instance in an apologetic sense. So there's a lot to do in philosophy there. And let me kind of conclude this video with some final thoughts. When you're using philosophy, what we're not trying to do, once you start to learn it, particularly fallacies, logical fallacies and whatnot, the objective here is not to tear down others' arguments in order to appear to be the smartest guy in the room, or to win arguments. It's easy to abuse that way, and in fact, I see it all the time online. But that's not really the best use of it, I don't think. I don't think it's very virtuous. Instead, the tools of philosophy, I believe, ought to be used to seek truth. Again, that was in the definition I gave earlier. And if we're seeking truth, then we need to be willing to abandon certain concepts we have if we find out they're not true. If they're not true, why would we hold them? We want to hold only true beliefs, and we do our best to do that. But what that means is in dialogue sometimes, if we're not doing that and we're trying to win an argument, you can do that without actually being right. And you don't even need logic to do that. There are different tricks people can use rhetorically in order to win an argument, just by attacking their opponent's character to sway the audience or whatever it might be in order to win the argument, but they're not any more correct. In fact, they might be the dumbest guy in the room. They're just good at arguing. So, and that's not what philosophy is. That's not what philosophers are, or logicians, or any of the other sub-disciplines. Instead, again, our goal is to seek truth. And so when we approach a conversation, we don't want to be defensive. In other words, we should allow the other person to criticize our argument. Now again, any criticism of yourself, your education, anything about you, anything other than the argument is off limits in philosophy. It's going to violate the rules of logic, and here comes logic, he's going to red card you for that. With philosophy then, if we're seeking truth, and we're trying not to be defensive about our concepts and our ideas, what we want to allow in the dialogue is understanding and clarity. So the main thing I want to do is allow either my opponent or somebody I'm talking to the opportunity to fully explain their position. And I may take the entire duration of the conversation just to make sure I understand them completely. I may not even get to rebut or refute or do anything else other than just understand their position. And a lot of times if you do this, you may find that your beliefs that the two of you are holding are actually a lot closer than you realize. But because we identify ourselves by camps, Republican and Democrat, conservative and liberal, atheist and Christian, whatever it might be, that starts to immediately force us to reject somebody from another camp's concepts without truly listening and evaluating them. And that's not being a good philosopher. Now, this can better be expressed by the principle of charity. Now here the principle of charity doesn't mean that I allow my opponent to win just because I'm being nice. All right? Being nice is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that ever. However, the principle of charity is trying to interpret your opponent's arguments as always being true, or at least in the strongest possible way, rather than seeking to destroy their argument. Because again, philosophy is an exchange of ideas where we are seeking clarity and understanding about truth, reality, rightness, whatever the topic might be. And so we want to always avoid just trying to win the argument. Because again, you can win it and not be right. And moreover, if you're defending a belief and you're holding a belief that's wrong and you're just simply being defensive in order to win an argument, think about what that may do for you. In the long run, it may end up hurting you somehow because you're holding something that's just simply not true. So rather than approach conversations assuming the other guy is wrong, always interpret what he's saying as being correct and weigh that correctly with correct philosophical tools, which we're going to discuss on the channel. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope that it's given some clarity on the topic of philosophy as well as some understanding. And if you have any questions, guys and gals, I would love to hear from you. So leave your comments below. And even if you don't agree with me, leave your comments below. Just remember to be courteous and practice the principle of charity. I'm totally open to different opinions. I want to hear them. People who troll, you're just going to get deleted, so let's not do that. Alright, if you enjoyed the content, hey guys, remember, subscribe, hit that like button, it really helps a lot. Share the video, and we hope it's been helpful and a blessing to you. Hey, God bless, guys. We love you. See you next time.
Let me tell you something, you whippersnapper. Stupid robot. Shucks.